today we have myself and two other special guests joining us. I'd like them to introduce themselves, but before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Rawi. I'm a missionary church planter and trainer currently in Bangkok, Thailand, originally from New York City. We're currently planting a church amongst English-speaking Thai and Thai Chinese in urban Bangkok. And I came across Gentle and Lowly firstly through the social media buzz as people began reading it, but especially this past New Year as we began using it as our discipleship material our weekly meetings, at our weekly meetings on Sundays. And so it's been great. I've been enthralled by the book, and I hope this time for us together will help us see some of the highlights of how this book can be used in your ministries and help grow your congregations. I'd like to introduce our other two guests. Who would like to go first, actually?
Z, why don't you go first?
Okay, thanks, Simon. Hi, I'm Z. I'm a pastor of One Covenant Church here in Singapore. We started working on the church about 6 years ago. This year, we're celebrating our 5th anniversary. So I came across the book through a recommendation of a friend. I was having coffee with him, and he mentioned this book that he was reading. I'd never heard of it, but then I soon realized I actually did read some stuff by Dane Ortlund. I think there was a book called Shaped by the Gospel by Tim Keller. And in that book, he kind of invited other people to interact with him. And one of the guys was Dane Ortlund. So I realized I had already read some of his stuff. And then, I picked up the book, kind of flipped through it, and I decided to work through it with some of the staff at church. And I found it just really helpful personally, as well as for the staff team. Yeah.
My name is Simon Murphy. I am the pastor of Redemption Hill Church in Singapore. It's a church that was planted about 13 years ago and have been working and ministering here since then. As you can probably tell, I'm not originally from Singapore, but originally from South Africa, but we have made Singapore home and have really enjoyed ministering in Southeast Asia. I got to know Gentle and Lowly actually initially through some of the family members of Dane Ortlund, just having read some of their material. And so was familiar with the Ortlunds, and then saw another book, I think on social media, and realized it was from the same family, and that piqued my interest. And then I did some digging about it about 6 months before it was published actually, and saw what the book was about, and it sounded really compelling to me. And so ordered it and read it quite soon after it first came out, and was really, really impacted. It encouraged me so much that we ended up ordering about 100 copies for all of our leaders in the church, who were really blessed by it in the midst of the pandemic. So I've really found it helpful and encouraging, and that's how I got to know about Gentle and Lowly.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that. That's cool how we all came about it certain different ways. And I'm going to try to volley some questions amongst us to see how the book has engaged both us personally as well as our congregations and our leadership. The next question I want to share with us is this. How has Gentle and Lowly affected you personally and affected your role as a leader? How about Z? You go first.
Okay. Yeah, I think as I thought about it, just at a very, very personal level, Christ became a lot more personal to me. I think this was the line in the first chapter where Dane Ortlund says, the gospel offers us not only legal exoneration, but it also sweeps us into Christ's very heart. And I think that's what kind of struck me. I was pastor for quite a few years. You preach the Bible, you preach the gospel in and out, you kind of understand how the gospel, works. But there was a simple insight that at the heart of the gospel is a person, and it's the person of Jesus Christ. And Jesus's heart toward me was one of love. He was gentle, he's lowly, he's kind, he's compassionate. He draws near. Even in my most sinful and terrible moments. So I think if there was anything that changed me personally, it was that Jesus became a lot more personal to me as a person. Yeah.
I think it's really helped to convince my heart in a deeper way that Jesus really is for me, and that Jesus being for me is not just one part of himself that he has to balance with a whole lot of other aspects of himself that he's trying to keep in tension.
Mm.
But that at the deepest heart of himself, he really is for me. He's not trying to balance this. It's not like one day he wakes up and he's really frustrated, but in the afternoon he's for me, or that he's really for me. But at the same time, he's not too for me, because he's also got to really be against me, because he's angry with me for having sinned. But that in the deep in the heart of God and in the heart of Jesus is he loves me and he really is for me. And I think this book has really helped to press that in a far deeper way, not only because he tackles that similar theme from so many different angles in the book and shows it from so many different scriptures, but I think he just shows how, in one sense, the heart of Christ is a whole heart, and that's what he feels and bleeds with for us. And as he will explain later on in the book, this doesn't mean that he's soft towards sin or doesn't care about my sins. He hates them. But that is purely and entirely consistent with his being ultimately and completely for me. So I think that has helped me as a leader to turn to him more quickly and more deeply, and to really rest in him. And I think that's what Jesus is calling us to do in Matthew 11, is to come and find our rest in him, because he's like that. And so I found that Dane Ortlund has helped me as a leader to do that in a deeper way. I'm sure I've still got a long way to go, but I think I'm making a little bit of progress with the help of this book.
Yeah, I think Dane Ortlund, for me, as I was reading it, it gave this sort of fresh perspective on Christ that I so needed. I've been in ministry, we moved to Thailand 9 years ago, and went to a lot of valley moments in ministry, a couple of burnouts, but this book has really helped me see how I've survived, because Christ has been for me. I love how, wait, Simon, you said that, so for me. And so because he's so for me, even in those dark times, he was with me the whole time. And I found that the book really helped me see that more clearly, looking at it in the past and then in the present and going into the future. And I think for me, the thing that really hit me hard was just, we study the heart of Christ, these chapters after chapter after chapter, what I began to see in myself is an evaluation of, like, how am I as a pastor towards my people? How am I loving and caring, and just in a very gentle and safe space that God has created for me to evaluate that, and to see how Christ walked with the struggling and the weak in faith, and how as a pastor I have to do the same, right? That's really been something that has impacted me personally as a minister.